It's spring break, and we're headed down from Calgary to Moab, Utah. The plan is to drive for 2 days, and then a mountain bike for a week in the Moab desert.
The drive from Calgary to Moab takes about 20 hours. We crossed the US-Canada border at Carway because Google Maps said it was faster by about 2 hours. In retrospect, we should have taken the longer way through Coutts to avoid the high mountain passes and crazy winds, because it would have taken about the same amount of time. The plan was to dry camp with our RV by the trails near Moab and go into town every few days to dump and resupply with fresh food and water. We got this RV at the start of the pandemic, and we've never used it without full hookups before, but we're going with another family who does this every year, so I think we'll be alright. The RV wasn't dewinterized yet, since most nights are still below freezing. We just made do with 2 5-gallon camping water jugs. The first night we stopped at a Walmart in Idaho Falls. Our stay at Walmart was not great because a street cleaner was cleaning the parking lot at 4:30 a.m. But that didn't really matter because we were on our way again by 8 in the morning. Right off the bat, my 3 boys were fighting. Not fist fighting, but this non-stop bickering and shouting that just drove me completely insane. I pulled over the RV and said, unless we change our attitudes, I'm turning the RV around and we are going home. Then we all spent about 15 minutes reflecting about things that we were thankful for and things that we were hopeful for, and then we wrote them down and stuck them on the fridge. We were going on a mountain biking trip, but actually, this trip was really about character building. Our attitudes warmed up like the weather as we descended into the Utah desert. We flushed out the antifreeze and filled the water tanks in a town called Green River. No leaks in any of the lines. The scenery was spectacular as we descended into the Colorado River Valley. Our first stop, where we'd meet our friends, was the Bar M trailhead. It was about dinner time when we arrived, just enough time for a quick ride. After warming up on the pump track at the trailhead, we went on a 3-mile trail called Lazy Easy. Between the 2 families, we had 6 boys from ages 4 to 12. That's a big range in strength and stamina. Manny, my youngest, held his own, climbing himself to the top. Coming down, he struggled a lot because it was getting cold and dark, and he fell a lot. Still, he finished riding on his own bike. Good job, Manny. The next morning, at the crack of dawn, I went for a ride with the other dad on Circle O. You can't capture just how breathtaking it is to be riding in the open desert air at sunrise. Breathtaking, literally. After some fun with rockets, we made our way down to Arches National Park. Unfortunately, the park was full, and they weren't accepting any more visitors for the day, so we drove up to the Klondike Bluffs area. After checking out the fossilized dinosaur tracks, we went biking. The trails that we wanted to tackle were mostly blues and blacks, so Manny rode with me on the shotgun. You might think he's just getting an easy ride, but he knows how to move his weight around so we can get up the steep climbs and down the drops without going over the handlebars. We went up Homer in Alaska and came back down on Nome. My wife is newer to mountain biking, and this was her first time on a black. Still, she handled the steepness and the technical parts like a veteran. As for the kids, they're so far ahead I can't even see them. We finished the ride with some Dino Flow and the easy trails to return to the trailhead. Afterwards, we drove down to this massive sand dune near the entrance of Arches National Park. It's so big that people were tobogganing down it. The kids had a blast digging holes and running down the slopes. Me, not so much, because I got the RV stuck in the sand. Fortunately, a guy with a truck offered to help pull me out. 20,000 pounds of RV is not easy to get unstuck. This has been a really long day. We couldn't find any space in the campgrounds along the Columbia River, so we spent the night back at the Bar M parking lot. The next morning, we got up at 6:30 to go to Arches National Park. Driving a 32-foot motorhome on the steep, narrow road up the cliff in the dark was a little intimidating, but experiencing the sunrise over the arches was worth it. No biking is allowed in Arches National Park, so everything today was on foot. We first went to Sand Dune Arch and Broken Arch. Then we went to the Devil's Garden trailhead and hiked to the Landscape Arch and the Navajo Arch. The hike to Delicate Arch, probably the most iconic arch in the park, was too strenuous in the heat, so we didn't go there. We needed to save our strength for biking. Arches National Park was an incredible natural geological gem that we could touch, climb, and explore. It's quite a wonder how these massive arches formed all by themselves through natural processes. I loved how the light and sound echoed through the canyons and how the magnificent red rock arches contrasted against the deep blue sky. It really heats up during the day, so make sure you have a hat and water. And if you go deeper into the park earlier in the day, then you can miss most of the crowds. At the end of the day, we went into Moab to dump and resupply. That night, we drove out and camped at the Horse Thief trailhead. I noticed black soot on my furnace exhaust. My fridge gas light was also blinking intermittently. These were symptoms of a deeper problem that I would later discover. Day 5. From Horse Thief, we rode Chisholm, a 7-mile, fun and flowy, mostly downhill trail through sand and slickrock. The trail winds around cliffs and through wide, flat spaces. While generally flowy, the trail still had many interesting sections that required me and Manny to practice operating as one rider. One thing about biking with kids is that every water break becomes a once-in-a-lifetime chance to explore. As a dad, I just had to let go of expectations on time frames for covering mileage and enjoy the moments with the family. When we reached the end, the dads got to ride back up the road to shuttle everyone back to the trailhead. That night, we managed to snatch sites at the Horse Thief First Come First Serve campground. It was a great chance for the adults to relax a bit, for the kids to do a few laps by themselves on the trails around the campground, and to break out the fire pit and roast marshmallows and fish balls. Yes, that's right, Chinese-style fish balls. The next day, we did some more trails in the Horse Thief area, Mustang and 7-Up. It was a bit of a grueling day because the temperature was pushing 30 degrees. Like the day before, I rode back up the hill on the road to grab the RV and to shuttle the kids back. And that's when I found out that I couldn't retract the slides in the RV because I had no power. I couldn't even start the generator to charge the batteries. I should have known something was fishy when the furnace wasn't running in the morning, and it wasn't the fish balls from the night before. After boosting the generator from the chassis battery using jumper cables, I managed to retract the slides and pick everyone else up. But I've been driving around so much, my batteries should be full of charge. How could they be dead? Did the batteries go bad? Was there something draining them? Dry camping with no RV batteries is not okay. I needed to get to the bottom of this. With no phone signal, internet, electrical tools, or multimeter, it was time to do some MacGyvering. I made a conductivity tester with a light bulb, spare bike cables, and tape, and used my FM transmitter to read voltage. I traced the problem deep into my RV's electrical system to the isolator. This thing was supposed to connect the chassis electrical system to the RV house electrical system when driving, and it wasn't connecting. So I removed the isolator and pried it open.
So here's the problem. When current goes through these two electrodes, triggers an electromagnet which pushes this thing down.
Anyways, I cleaned the copper connections with a piece of sandpaper from my bike tire patch kit and put it all back together. No more dead batteries or sooty furnace or blinking fridge lights for the rest of the trip. Day 7, Sunday, rest day. A perfect day to spend some quiet time indoors, grab some lunch at the Moab food truck park, refill the RV, and then set up camp at the Sandy Flats campground just outside of town. So far, this has been the wildest, most improvised and spontaneous trip that we have ever been on. Following our friends from place to place without a real plan has completely pushed us out of our comfort zone. It's really only because of them that we dared to come on this adventure. Our minds have been blown by the freedom of dry camping. Who knew you could do this with an RV? The speed and intensity of our mountain biking is, well, nothing like the stuff you see on YouTube. We don't really send it or do anything that impressive. But what I have found amazing is the way that the boys have taken care of each other. How they, when they're not fighting or whining, have encouraged and pushed each other and strengthened each other's confidence. And I've just enjoyed the conversations and interactions. Intentional conversations that go beyond mountain bikes and RV parts. about our relationship with the Creator, surrounded by the awesome and beautiful expanse of the Utah desert. I was told you can't go mountain biking in Moab without riding the Slickrock Trail. This trail is a bit too long and difficult for our kids, so the dads went out by ourselves at dawn. Slickrock got its name from early settlers when their wagons with metal wheels and horses with horseshoes would slide all over it. But the opposite is true with modern rubber tires. The tacky, clean Slickrock rides like rough concrete, so you can climb these incredibly steep slopes without any back wheel slippage. This unique trail crisscrosses the famous Hell's Revenge 4x4 trail, bringing you to the edge of the canyon overlooking the Colorado River. This trail was a serious workout, alternating non-stop between punchy climbs and steep, twisty descents. You kind of get into a trance following the little white squares painted on the rock to mark the trail. The Slickrock Trail was awesome, the best 2.5 hours of non-stop fun any dad can have at 6 in the morning. Later that day, when everyone else woke up, we did a trail called Falcon Flow, a 5-mile trail that winds itself through the beautiful valleys nearby. To save everyone the long gravel climb, we used the RVs to shuttle the families from one trailhead to the other. The sketchy roads gave my big clunky motorhome a thorough rattling. Plates fell out, sliding doors broke loose, and even the backup camera monitor fell out of the dash. Between the driving and mountain biking that day, I would say there were definitely some transferable skills. After that, I took the family back to the Slickrock Trail, but just on the short practice loop. That was a lot of walking. I should have listened to the white paint. We wrapped up the day at the Moab Bike Park.
Keep going. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah! Woo!
I showed him how it's done. Woo! And that was the end of biking, because the next day it started raining. And I think that was pretty good timing, because I was getting the feeling that the kids were all biked out. So we checked out the Petroglyphs, which are 4,000-year-old rock carvings.
Somebody wrote envy. Yeah, that's not good. That's very bad. They ruined the Petroglyphs. And look at everybody writing on the wall here. That's bad too.
It's kind of humbling thinking about just how long these great rock walls have stood over this river, watching the shadows shift as the seasons pass. And the people who walked through these canyons thousands of years ago, what were they like? What did they think about? Did they hope and love and dream like I do? Maybe if I close my eyes and peer hard enough into the silence, I can hear the sound of breathing and scratching rock, the sound of our irrepressible urge to reach for transcendence. Later that day, we drove out to Goblin State Park and hiked into the Goblin Valley. The strange goblin formations lined the networks of endless canyons and created a surreal mix of eerie and fascinating, like the feeling of watching and being watched at the same time. Periodically, the sun would emerge and provide momentary solace from the dark, angry sky, looming like curtains awaiting the end of our adventure. Our last night in Utah, out in the open with the pronghorn. The next morning, before starting on our way home, we just had to go for one last hike in a nearby slot canyon. On our way back, I got news of some things happening back home that triggered some questions that really dug into me. Questions like, why do things happen the way they do? Is there a purpose to anything? Or does everything just kind of happen randomly? And then these images of all the canyons that I saw this week filled my mind, and this is what I realized. The water flows seemingly randomly over centuries and millennia. If I look at a single rock, there's often evidence of violent, turbulent erosion. But if I take a step back and take in the beauty and the wonder of the whole canyon, then I'm humbled and the answers to my questions become self-evident. Perhaps it was for this one piece of insight that I went to Utah.
Yeah, we've been here for a half an hour.
Hey, look.
Papa, take a nap. What?
Oh, I need the other head.
The lighting's not very
Get the
good.
vacuum with the
Really?
1967.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below, and also don't forget to click the subscribe and like button.